And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, it's your Friday roundtable, the small table. Marlon and myself. Good morning, everybody. John's still on vacation. So, but we're going to rock this Friday roundtable. So, interesting content coming out. Well, actually, it's out already. So, Juanita Holmes, former chief of NYPD, who's been in the spotlight for this platform for the Finest Unfiltered, when we talk about people dipping into different pensions. And sure, as the commissioner of probation, she's under investigation from DOI, which has now led to a criminal investigation probe. So, Marlon, quite interesting. Looks like, in my opinion, Juanita Holmes is another Adams crony, close to Philip Banks. Not surprised by this at all. I always say, here we go. Here's another scandal that emanated from the NYPD under the helm of Eric Adams, the Eric Adams administration. This thing just keeps going. Scandal after scandal. What are your thoughts, brother? What are your thoughts on Juanita Holmes? I mean, listen, we spoke about it, about her pension from commissioner of probations, and somehow getting another NYPD pension. Man, it's striking. It's striking. It's one after another. What are your thoughts? Good morning to the chat. Good morning, everybody. We appreciate it, friends and listeners. Chat's already moving. I think this thumbnail is outstanding, by the way. So, yeah, Eddie West, how you doing, brother? It's been a while, man. Where you been, man? You've been busy smoking cigars, so it's good to have you back here. What a pleasure. Amazing Ant, good morning. Great people here as always. If I don't mention anyone, I appreciate it. It's just the chat's moving real quick. So, Marlon, and here's Patrick Donahue. Of course, I could use a good laugh. So, and Detective Nolan. What do you think, Marlon? What are your thoughts on Juanita Holmes? I think she's another NYPD crony for Eric Adams. Nothing different. But I will say this before you say anything. I think, based on my anecdotal experience, based on my knowledge, and definitely speaking to some other intelligent people, that they have a strong case on Juanita Holmes.
Yeah. Good morning, guys. Yeah, sorry about my voice. I'm a little under the weather today, so hopefully I won't lose my voice halfway through the show. But
it's either muting or losing your voice.
But the title of this is this episode is yet another scandal, yet another NYPD scandal. And I know some of you are gonna think, well, what's happening is happening in the Department of Probation, but there's something to keep in mind, right? It's that Juanita Holmes first retired in 20 when was it 2018 she first retired, right? And she came back under Eric Adams, right? She came back, and upon coming back, she was appointed chief of training, and we all know what happened there with the Cardi B issue. This is when she brought Cardi B to the academy, and things didn't go so well. It just was a terrible look for the department. And those of you, I'm sure we're gonna get one or two guardians invading the chat today.
Oh yeah,
but it's something to keep in mind. The person that was upset with what Juanita did was the PC, and that was Commissioner Sewell. And we all know, she's the first Black female police commissioner. So keep that in mind before you start hopping on the keyboard and angry typing at us, right? So that didn't go too well, and she was basically booted, so to speak, to probation, and she was there on sort of a detail from the NYPD because she was still in the NYPD. I'm not exactly sure how exactly that works out, but it did, because we saw her again being listed in the Finest for a retirement about maybe, what is it now, 2 months now. So the thing is here, even though this happens in probation, the news keeps mentioning mentioning that she's a former NYPD chief. Okay. And you know that news loves to embarrass the NYPD and to run with anything that happens with the NYPD, right? So the reason why this is named another NYPD scandal is because even though it happens in probation, she was still an NYPD chief, and the news media and the low information public, okay, those people who don't really dig into news stories, they just hear the surface level um talk by the media, and then that's what they'll believe, right? Those people are going to think of her still as the NYPD, okay? So we'll go through what exactly the scandal is, but again, it's not a good look for her considering all the other issues she's been involved with Cardi B, and also Sewell didn't like the fact that she wanted to remove the mile-and-a-half run. So with all that said, this isn't a good look for her, and there's a certain time when it's time for you to call it quits, and hopefully she's called it quits from public life in New York City and the NYPD.
You know what's interesting about that, Marlon, is that political loyalty seems to have the hierarchy when it comes to morality in the Eric Adams administration. Someone like Juanita Holmes, and to me, that was striking. And you're saying, well, what's striking? And I tell you what, if people don't know, so Juanita Holmes, I know, happens to be in good physical fitness, right? She always took care of herself. Excuse me. She was a runner. She was known to, during her time while she was working during the day, she would take her lunch hour or time to go out running. So I'm sure you're probably aware of that, but she's big into running. So quite interesting that here's someone that's an actual runner herself into physical fitness, but didn't advocate for the mile-and-a-half run. I think that's quite interesting, right? You think that especially someone like Juanita Holmes, who's into running, and I remember personally talking to her about running years ago, and then I thought it was quite interesting and ironic that here she is saying that the mile-and-a-half is not necessary. And it just shows you politics is the hierarchy. So what's going on here? So this criminal investigation probe, according to the article, sources say that numerous people have been interviewed. Numerous investigators in probation have been interviewed. So that's why I'm telling you, I think, Stephen S. says that's interesting. Yeah, I think it's quite interesting that she's someone that was a runner herself. I have to say, she stayed in shape. As she got older, she continued to run. Who's it? Michael Freed says here it is. Man, this chat is just flying over here. Mike Freed, good morning, brother. He says she did a marathon as well. She did a marathon. And listen, I don't know her that well, but well enough to know that she was into running. I mean, something that she often talked about, and ironic that she's opposing the mile-and-a-half. Just shows you, wow, politics really overrides optics. So I just have some notes here. There's just too much going on here. So the exact scope is still unclear of why she's being investigated. But the alleged misconduct includes, you ready for this? Nepotism and patronage hiring, bypassing civil service rules, circumventing procurement rules, retaliation against employees, manipulation of agency metrics, which means data. I mean, one after another. And if anyone knows, I mean, she's pretty close to Philip Banks, another Eric Adams crony, who, in my opinion, I mean, we talked about this platform extensively. And that's where a lot of opposition started with this podcast and Eric Sanders, is the debate over these pensions. How are people leaving the NYPD? I mean, this is her third time, right? 2018, she retired. And I heard a rumor. It's quite interesting, just to show you how great it must be to be part of the Eric Adams administration. I don't know if it's true. I think it is true, but I heard a pretty solid rumor that when she left, she got a job at American Express making about $400,000 a year, and gave that job up and came back to the NYPD. And then, in the spotlight of the whole Cardi B thing, and Sal must be licking his chops right now, because that Cardi B incident was pretty embarrassing. But he must be licking his chops right now. So, and rightfully so. But she gets appointed to probation, and then she gets another NYPD retirement. I think that seems pretty crazy to me. It just doesn't seem kosher to me. I mean, Juanita Holmes, first of all, I mean, she didn't strike me as someone that was super intelligent. I'm impressed. I like the fact that she's into fitness, but she didn't strike me as someone that's intelligent. Just another person that took a seat as chief in the NYPD who stuck around long enough and had the right connections. Just another tier 1 employee. But she left a $400,000 job and came back to the NYPD. That's the rumor I heard. If anybody could verify it here, any of our friends and listeners, I would appreciate it. That's just what I heard. So I say to myself, wow. Yeah, because if that's true, American Express must have been like, hey, Chief, can you do this? But, oh, yeah. Surprising when you actually have to do things yourself, right? Mom, what are your thoughts?
Well, the question is, did she leave or was she forced to leave? Because there's also a strong rumor that she was forced out, and that things weren't going too well over there. I mean, think of it. If you're making nearly $500,000 in the private sector after a by all accounts, a full career. I mean, she retired as a chief already, right? So you had a pretty full career, and you go into the private. You're getting a chief's pension, and you go into the private sector making nearly $500,000. I'm not too sure you're going to come back, okay? But I remember her name was also one of the names that were rumored to be on the short list for PC. So
very short list.
yeah. So you wonder if she came back for the opportunity.
Yo, Mom, when they said that her name was up for commission, I was like, what? I mean, if anybody is listen, like I said, I wasn't impressed. I like the fact she said the physical fitness, but not impressed.
I mean that's good, but I think every chief should be in some sort of shape, I mean, if you're not in shape, I don't think she should be. I don't think that should be anything to write home about, because, like, if you got to be in shape to inspire all the boots on the ground.
Spot on, brother. Spot on.
And when you're a chief and you don't look the part, I think it's a bad look for us, because when I look at those Florida sheriffs, I mean, have you ever seen a overweight Florida sheriff? Yeah. I mean, you got to set the table, and setting the table means to remain in some sort of shape. And again, if you can't do the job as chief, then how do you expect the men below you to do the job? And if you can't do the job as chief, then maybe that's your signal that it's time to move on, and the thing is also that usually by that time you've already had like 30 years anyway. So I mean, a lot of these guys stay way past the time they really should have left, and I just think we shouldn't celebrate that. There's nothing, that's not really an accomplishment. You're supposed to be in that shape anyway. Yeah. But I put the link into the chat, guys, and for you to see. This is the Gothamist article itself. Okay, so just as Eric says, the Gothamist is reporting that the DOI has referred an investigation into Juanita Holmes while she was in the Department of Probation. They referred her to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. They referred her to Bragg. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to get anywhere, because it is Bragg, right? But like Eric said, the allegations here are very fascinating when you consider all the other allegations that Eric Adams' cronies have had thrown against them, and the allegations here include that she improperly hired cronies. She hired family. She she used intimidation to kind of sideline any opposing viewpoints in the agency. And where have we seen all that before? Well, we've seen it between Tim Pearson, Jeffrey Madry, Ed Caban, Henderson, Festino. Who else have I forgotten? Even Chell. You know, we've seen all these allegations in the past, and I'm going to bring them up as we go through it. But the point I'm trying to make here is that she was an Eric Adams crony, and yes, she seemed to follow the entire playbook of the Eric Adams administration, the leadership playbook, which is intimidate, retaliate, and you know, enrich your cronies.
Spot on. And that's, you know what, that's a key element. I think that's a interesting flashpoint about this article. So what I like to look for when it comes to these scandals, right? Scandal after scandal. It's one after another when it comes to these Eric Adams cronies. And at some point, it kind of reminds me, it's interesting about the NYPD, right? Because the NYPD's theory when it came to civilian complaints and to determine if someone should be red flagged or not is seeking patterns, right? Even if you get numerous allegations that are unfounded or unsubstantiated, well, the NYPD looks for patterns and says, well, kind of the ideology is, hey, for instance, rhetorically speaking, let's say Marlon. And by the way, Rob Lucas just said 100% Marlon. You answer the question of what is the common denominator. Exactly. Rob, I love you, brother. Good morning. That's what I'm jumping into right now is the commonalities here, is the patterns, right? And that's what the NYPD does when it comes to civilian complaints. How do you determine if someone's actually a red flag? Which is a good reason of why I was never red flagged, which shows how I was a target by the Civilian Complaint Review Board because there weren't any patterns, right? And what the patterns are this. If Marlon and I were both working and independent from each other, and if we had, or let's say, for instance, let's say Marlon and I were civilians and we made complaints against a cop and we're independent from each other, we don't know each other, we have different incidents at different times, and we both make the same complaint, and then someone else who's completely independent, maybe a couple months later, makes the same complaint, that's a red flag because there's commonalities. And that's the red flag that's going on with these scandals. And you just said it, right? Timothy Pearson, Philip Banks, Juanita Holmes. What's the commonality? Is they all want to get their crumbs. And so it was quite interesting to me. In this article, there's not a lot of meat and potatoes. I think that the Gothamist has, I think they have stuff right now and they're holding it to their chest. Excuse me. Samantha says spot on. Hey, good morning, by the way. Spot on. I think at this point, the way this article reads, I think the Gothamist has some information they're holding to their chest, and I think they're waiting for something to pop. Because she talks about the $90,000 police vehicle that Juanita Holmes got as commissioner of probation. And to me, that was interesting, right? Why did she have to mention that? Which to me leads to maybe more crumbs, more private contracts. There's a lot of commonalities here between the allegations that we see in the Eric Adams administration. And the commonality also is exactly what Marlon just said, right? The intimidation, the retaliation, the nepotism, the cronyism. If anything we see by each member appointed by Eric Adams and his administration, it's nepotism, nepotism, nepotism. And you might say, well, how does that equate to criminal activity? And I said this way before these scandals started to actually come out in the public. When John and I first started podcasting, I said nepotism, at some point, there is a level of tolerance in all organizations when it comes to nepotism. Unfortunately, something you probably can never eradicate. You'll always have some form of nepotism. But the nepotism that we see, or we saw in this administration, is so outlandish that it equates to criminal activity. And we see it. This article is pretty good. If you actually, even though it's missing a lot of meat and potatoes, but if you comb through it, those allegations, when you couple them together, to me, they have a lot of information, a lot from these investigators, and I think more is going to come out. What are your thoughts on that? By the way, I really appreciate the chat, man. Friends and listeners, outstanding. A lot of people here talking about her in the private sector, and that's true. Most of the chiefs, as they move up, they get so removed from doing actual police work or doing any work. And if anyone wants to argue that, I mean, I would love to have that debate. But actually doing any work, there are a few chiefs. There were, like, for instance, that guy Wilcox. That guy used to work. That guy was a hard worker. I've seen him personally. He was always working. But there are plenty of chiefs that actually just get far removed and they get very good at delegating, but never actually putting their fingers on anything. In my opinion, Juanita Holmes would fit that mold. I don't know, but to me, I could see her going to another place, and if it was American Express, like, hey, Chief, can you take a look at these reports? And it must be like, oh, I gotta do this myself. Yeah, you gotta do it. No, you can't just hand it to someone and go and say, coffee, bitch. No, you gotta do it yourself. I don't mean she's a bitch. I'm saying these are what these chiefs do. Hey, get me coffee, bitch. That's what they used to do. But in the private sector, it's like, well, no, you got to put your finger on it too. So, and Reed says here, very few executives stay in shape. Not asked to do 3 miles, but show you're in decent conditions. Yeah, I agree with you, Marlon. It's not something we should brag about, which is why I think Edwards, besides the fact of DEI and the deflection, was getting so much credit for jumping a 2-foot barrier, because these chiefs, as they go up a rank, they really start to look disheveled. I mean, because they hang around way past than they should. They're enjoying the parties. They're having a good time. They're eating one fat meal after another, getting wine dined, pocket lined by the unions, the fraternals. So I guess the bar has been so low. It's like you see someone who goes out running and stays in shape. It's shocking. It shouldn't be. That I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think you have to set the table, You're their chief, you get paid the big bucks, okay? You get paid the big bucks, so there should be some sort of expectation that you look the part in the uniform. And I don't think it's too much to ask for. I mean, you could have a gym in your office, for God's sake, you're chief. Yeah. I really don't think it's too much to ask for the chief having to look the part of a chief, and look the part that he's ready to go to the trenches with you, But so I saved a couple articles and a couple sources. I mean, we all know what happened in the Adams administration, but I kind of wanted to compare it to what happened to the allegations against Holmes right now. So what you're looking at here is an article about the lawsuit from the 4 chiefs. Those 4 chiefs include Chief Essig, who's named here, and this is an interview by the CBS News, right? And you see the quote at the bottom where Chief Essig says he describes a culture of rampant corruption and cronyism, right? And he said that it also says that the chief noticed an unusually high number of inexperienced transfers to the department's sex crimes unit. We talked about that unit, before as well. How there were a lot of people being put there with like 2 years on, So here he is, Chief Essig, talking about the problem of putting inexperienced personnel into these units, and he himself calls it out here that it's straight up nepotism, right? And again, we're going back to the article with Chief Holmes here, and what does it say? Well, a former commissioner's nearly 3-year reign at probation was fraught with allegations of nepotism and patronage and circumvention of civil service rules. Okay, so again, it's the classic Eric Adams administration formula. Okay, and again, we said it a couple times, but I'll say it again. I think these guys didn't think for a second that Eric Adams was not going to win a second term, and I think because they thought that, they went, they did things that even, nepotism has always existed in the NYPD. Don't get me wrong, but I think they went extra on this because they figured there's no way they're going to have to account for any of this, because Eric Adams would have 4 more years, and after 8 years is finished, nobody's going to care. None of this will matter. And unfortunately for them, it didn't turn out that way, and we're seeing a lot of the chickens come to roost, in that the city is declining representation on Pearson and Marjorie, and now Eric Adams. And what I thought was interesting about this is that let me see if I could add it back to the stage. What I thought was interesting here is that all the way at the bottom of the article, it says it says the lawsuits are being reviewed. Whether the city will represent Holmes in the suits remains undetermined. Okay, so that's very, very interesting here. Okay, and it's I don't know, might be more bad news for the Crumbs crew.
Well, just think how much the Crumbs crew, Eric Adams administration, costs the city in funds. We're talking about lawsuit after lawsuit, scandal after scandal. We have numerous appointees in the Eric Adams administration, including Eric Adams, right, who was appointed as mayor, hiring family members that are not qualified. Now, listen, I get it. I think Samantha says it here right now. Samantha said, let me look back at this chat. I think it's flying. Good morning, guys. I really appreciate it. Yeah, Samantha Giacone. Good morning. She says nepotism will always exist. I agree. I think it's pretty impossible to get to a point of zero tolerance, but not to the level this administration took it to. That's why I say the level that this administration took their position with nepotism was so bold that it was criminal. And someone else here said about all the chiefs being in on it. Yeah, listen, think about this, right? I mean, if you're a chief of the NYPD, that's why, again, I will continue to say it. If anyone disagrees with me, please say so and tell me why. But if you're an active chief, I get it. If you're a chief in the NYPD and you're riding out your 4 years time or your 10 years time, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But if you're a chief in the NYPD and you're riding out your time and you're not involved in everyday NYPD drama or what goes on, fine. But if you're an active chief in the NYPD, in order to be comfortable where you are, excuse me, well, Marlon's sick and I got all these spring allergies, but potentially move up. You have to be willing to get along with this program, right? Everyone has to be willing to play this same game, because if you're in opposition to it, guess what? You're an outsider. You're not going to last. Bye-bye to you. So every one of these active chiefs in the NYPD is complicit. Every one of them. I have a problem with every one of them. I do. Now, one person stood up and said they have a problem with the speculation that we can see from a distance and they saw up close. Don't tell me that they're so compartmentalized that they have no idea. If they're working in Staten Island, they have no idea what goes on at One Police Plaza. You don't go to One Police Plaza, you're actually in Staten Island. I really find that hard to believe. Or if you're a chief in the Bronx, you're not at One Police Plaza, you guys aren't out there rubbing elbows, you're not going to dinners together. I don't believe it. Not for a second. But again, crony after crony, and the nepotism is just so deep in the Eric Adams administration. But I tell you what, every one of them, these appointees, are just a bunch of dummies. They all thought exactly what Marlon said. Oh, Eric Adams is not going anywhere. I'm good. And they just got comfortable. A good source of mine here says that when she was at, the source I have says she was working at private Bank America. I heard it was American Express, whatever private company she was working for. A good rumor that potentially she was involved in expensive plane rides and things like that. So I don't know, but it's possible. It's not. I mean, I think Eric Adams was accused of that also, right? Major upgrades, but that's okay. It's okay. It's just upgrades. Right? It's okay. Look at it. We have one after another, scandal after scandal. We have all these red flags, which are patterns, commonalities amongst the those that are alleged to have committed crime in the Eric Adams administration. One after another, scandal after scandal. At what point are we going to say, wait a minute? It can't just be someone picking on the Eric Adams administration. Something's going on here, or something did happen here, and it cost the city millions. And isn't it interesting? Now that Eric Adams is not the mayor, Juanita Holmes may not be indemnified for the alleged misconduct here. Things have changed surely. So the fact that she will not be indemnified, which is leading towards maybe she will start talking. I tell you what, I think there's a lot of meat to this. I think they know something. I think even the Gothamist is holding this close to their chest, because I think there's a lot more sexy detail that's going to ferment and come out. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's also my question is how much of the NYPD is going to get roped into this? Okay, because again, she was still on the she was basically detailed out to probation. So what role
Yes,
does
thank you for saying
NYPD
that.
have in
Thank
all
you
of
for
this?
saying that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this could potentially drag some NYPD into it as well. And a, again, she also there's word that she also used some NYPD people in probation as well. Um, so again, uh, what did they do in to help her in there, and what did they do to cover it up or to prevent transparency? I think that remains to be seen, and I just wonder how deep it goes again. But let's go back to the article here. Okay. And again, these guys love luxury, by the way, because let's point out that she had that 90K luxury SUV. But back to the article, right? I thought this was pretty ironic, right? That she says here she is talking about transparency, and yet, right? She was there any transparency involved when she got that 90K luxury SUV and hired people including her niece and a doctor that there's some allegations that she knew the doctor prior to hiring him, so she hired him for probation as well. So was there any transparency involved in all of that, you know? Uh, but let's go back to the Crumbs crew now, right? So this is one of those allegations against Chell, okay? And again, if you could recall, this was when Chief Pontillo pointed out the numerous improper stops that the khaki pants guys were involved in, and how that was a problem for the in terms of liability of the department. And this is when Chell pulled him aside and told him, "Why do you have to tell her?" Okay, and this is going back to again how the Eric Adams crew works in terms of transparency and intimidation. And if you have an opposing viewpoint, they don't want to hear it. Okay, and did Chief Holmes demonstrate that? Oh yeah, she did, according to the allegations here. Okay, it says in the Gothamist article that Chief Holmes retaliated against subordinates whom believed were responsible for embarrassing information about the DOP. That is when information was leaked to the press that was contrary to the department narrative. She retaliated against those subordinates. So again, it's the same behavior that we've seen in Eric Adams' crew, and I you know I see it here with her, and so I mean these are all allegations, so it's nothing has been proven. But when you start seeing a pattern so many repeated so many times, I mean you really gotta you really gotta wonder. But yeah, this is Tim Pearson. This is so this is when Tim Pearson fast tracked his own nephew. Okay, this is the nepotism again in the involved in the Adams crew.
So I'm going to start calling this the big three. And I think that this is the big three. I came up with that this is the big three commonalities when it comes to the scandals under the Eric Adams administration. This is the big three. If you look at Philip Banks, you look at Juanita Holmes, you look at Timothy Pearson, all of them have the same three in common. You ready for the big three? And it's laid out in the Gothamist. Nepotism, cronyism, and patronage. And they all seem like they're the same thing, but there are some key differences, right? Because nepotism is appointing family and friends. And man, do we see that with Juanita Holmes, right? She appointed her niece. How ironic, right? Who didn't appear to be qualified either. And then we have cronyism, which is, appointing old workers to your benefit or, people that you worked with. And then the big one is patronage, political patronage, right? It's putting people in positions that could get you support. It could get you donors. And for Eric Adams, what else could it get you when you're running up for election or re-election? Votes. So if you look at all these dummies in the Eric Adams administration, I think they're all a bunch of dummies who just, they want to get their crumbs and think, hey, nothing's ever going to happen. Hey, Eric Adams administration, nothing's impervious to that. Nepotism, cronyism, and patronage. Those are the big three. Philip Banks, that's another one, right? Timothy Pearson. These assholes have cost the city millions. Striking to me that all of a sudden, someone like Juanita Holmes won't get indemnified. So I wonder, is her case worse than the others? Or is it just because Eric Adams is no longer in office that indemnification is no longer on the table? This is interesting because we need to go back to Timothy Pearson. How much was he indemnified before until finally he's flipping his own bill? Absolutely ridiculous. Yes, KB in New York City. Banks, unindicted co-conspirator. Yes. And someone put dumb as a box of rice. Who put this here? Let me see. You're absolutely right. User Kavaravi. Is that how you say it? Anyway, these names get all screwed up. If I mess it up, I'm sorry. Dumb as a box of rocks. Only there because of nepotism. Yep. It's nepotism on top of nepotism and cronyism and patronism. I'm telling you, if you look at every one of them, it's about patronage. And patronage is huge, right? Because you're putting people in positions that could get you donors, it could get you votes, it could get you support. And what could be the job of Commissioner Juanita Holmes in probation, Philip Banks, Timothy Pearson? What is the way that they could pay back to Eric Adams for getting their crumbs? By getting him patronage, by getting him votes. So it makes a lot of sense to me. Those are the big three.
So let's let me just run through the rest of the Adams crew while I'm here. But this is Jeffrey Madry now. Okay. Now this is this is an article regarding the lawsuit from Sergeant Roxanne Ludman, who her allegations are of sexual harassment coming from I believe it's, who is it? Is it Madry that it's coming from? No, Tim Pearson, right? Tim Pearson, yes. And one of the allegations are also that the intimidation came from Chief Madry. That basically he was the point man for Tim Pearson in terms of silencing allegations against him, right?
You don't say.
Yeah. And now let's go to Chief Faison. Sorry, Chief, but the allegations are what they are. And the allegations against you are that you put your cronies in aviation, right? And you gave your cronies exorbitant overtime, and apparently at the expense of everybody else who were there prior in aviation. So the allegations are what they are, okay? But the point being here is that you're seeing a consistent pattern of the same behavior from Eric Adams' associates, right? And let's get the next one. This is Chief Henderson. Now, if you're well aware, Chief Henderson has I think he has one coming from the officer who he allowed to stay home as well. But I haven't followed up on that lawsuit as well. But we know he's involved with one from Captain Gabby Walls, sexual harassment allegations. And you see on the bottom where it says, basically that she was intimidated and her career was stonewalled. Okay. They retaliated against her for speaking out against the sexual harassment that was coming from him. And also I think Tim Pearson is named in this as well. But let's go to the next one now. Let's see. Yeah, the next one is coming from the former PC himself, which is Tom Donlin. Okay, and what did Tom Donlin allege? Well, he alleged much of the same things here. Okay, that basically all these folks, Madry, Chell, Kaz, Shepard, Gerber, Saraceno, they're all involved in what's essentially a criminal organization. But he specifically highlighted that this organization was built on cronyism, coercion, and personal allegiance. Okay, so again, it's that repeating pattern that we keep seeing here. And I have one more on the Inspector Festino. If you recall, the two detectives that were in Department of Investigation, who essentially uncovered James Caban's nonsense before it really became known, and they were essentially sidelined and retaliated against while they were in DOI, while they were they were detailed out to DOI, and we got a whole bunch of chiefs named in that one as well for doing the same thing. And that includes Chief Festino, Baldessano's named in there, Inspector Robinson. So again, we're seeing the same pattern repeated over and over in the Adams administration. And just before before Eric goes again, keep in mind that there's something that we've said before, that the Adams administration loves expedience, right? And that love of expedience to them trumps the law. And we saw that the minute that Eric Adams got into office. So in a lot of ways, their behavior was, they were following the lead of the mayor who appointed him, right? Because once Eric Adams got into office in 2022, what did he do? Well, he got rid of us using the vax mandate, right? And what did he spend the next 2 to 3 years complaining about? Well, fixed costs in the NYPD, which include healthcare, pension contributions, and all of that. So it is my belief, again, and I've said this before, that the mandate was an illegal backdoor layoff and a backdoor measure to lower fixed costs, and expediently lower fixed costs while going around the law. And you saw it when he came into office. So in a lot of ways, what you're seeing from his cronies is them following his lead.
All right, you're spot on, brother. You're spot on. Who said it's actually pretty funny? Someone said, "Oh, here, Sleepy Joe. Good morning, brother." It's Marlon with almost a before you go, Eric. I love it. Outstanding, outstanding. To me, what's interesting about this? Where the fuck was DOI before? Where was DOI before? Right? Because to me, I've been saying this since John and I started this podcast, and now we have this big platform working together. Where was DOI before? DOI was hijacked by Mayor Eric Adams. Quite interesting, right? And this is why I also think that people like Timothy Pearson and Juanita Holmes and Philip Banks and all the other and nepotism, nepo babies and cronyism of Eric Adams thought if Eric Adams is reelected, well, they're good, right? Because who's appointed by DOI? Eric Adams. The mayor appoints the Department of Investigations commissioner. So completely hijacked. Now, DOI is supposed to be apolitical, right? It's supposed to be neutral, and that's not the case at all, right? If you have the mayor appointing the commissioner who's supposed to be in charge of investigating corruption, it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting that this is coming out now, because there is a laundry list of allegations here that had to be investigated for months or maybe even years. This is not something that just came out yesterday. So that's my question, Marlon, is where the fuck was DOI before? Why did this first come out now? And that's why I have a problem. And that's why all these dummies thought, nothing's going to happen to us. Eric Adams appoints DOI. DOI is under the blanket of Eric Adams. And if you say to yourself, well, DOI still does their job. Well, look at the investigation that DOI did about the khaki pants crew under John Shell when he was the chief in charge of the khaki pants while with the NYPD. It was The most vague report was absolutely useless. It was like toilet paper. You could wipe your ass with it. Absolutely ridiculous. So it's interesting to me. Where were they before? Where were they before? I'm curious. And why now? Because Eric Adams is no longer the mayor? Because El Mamdani is in office? It's the only thing that seems to make sense at this point.
Well, part of the reason why I think this is becoming a thing now is because I think also Chief Holmes rubbed a lot of the NGOs and community organizations that work with probation the wrong way. And, there's no doubt, right, that she wanted to shake things up as well. But I always say that it's a lost opportunity that the Adams administration had. Okay. And I talk about it specifically in the case of Kaz, because Kaz is a guy who he has a lot of collars on his name. He has what 350, 300 and change. So I mean, don't get me wrong. I say it's a lot. It's easier to have 300 collars when you have access to whatever you want in the precinct. It's not so easy when your uncle isn't a CO and you can just phone him up and be like, can I get a mark? Can I get a this? Can I get a that? And no supervisor is going to question you when you're exhausted and you're still vouchering items from an arrest after 15 hours when your uncle's CO. So it's a lot easier to get 300 plus collars when you know the guy in charge, as opposed to when you're a nobody in the precinct and you're just hustling your way to get to special ops. Okay. And you gotta beg for a car, you gotta beg for an ink ribbon, you gotta find ways to do things on your own without the resources which he had easy access to. So, but he does have 300 collars plus collars, so you got to give him that he was a worker. I said it was a lost opportunity because he also knew the inner workings of the department from being around Madry and all these chiefs who, they're a phone call away. If you become a supervisor, these chiefs are a phone call away from you, picking their brains for stuff, finding out what you should do and shouldn't do. So I think it was a lost opportunity for him not to have taken tests and gone up the ranks, because with both his knowledge of the street and of the administration, he could have been like a super chief, really, instead of, trying to get up there the fast way, which is via cronyism and nepotism. But so going back to what I was saying here, this to me, this was a lost opportunity for her, because I think she recognized the problem with the nonprofits and probation, right? And she sought to kind of limit their access to probation, and she even removed some of them from the Department of Probation's website. Right? I have no issue with scrutinizing these nonprofits, because we talk about it all the time. They have no metrics to measure their success, and that there's no way for you to see how efficiently that money from the city is being spent. So that's fine. The problem is that she went in there like a bull in a china shop, while also being one of the crumbs crew, and exhibiting the same behavior that Eric Adams does, and all the others do. And I think she made enemies there. And part of the reason why you're seeing those charges referred to the Manhattan DA's office in this article is because they're still angry at her, and it might be them trying to get back at her. Okay. And again, these organizations are usually left leaning, and left leaning meaning they're more than likely they're connected to the same apparatus, the same left wing socialist apparatus that even Bragg is connected to with Soros. Okay, so this is why I think you're hearing about it now.
Well, this is why I have a huge problem with DOI. For one, I mean, think about this: the allegations that are in the Gothamist in this article is a laundry list of allegations. And so in order for DOI to send something to the DA's office, this has to be far more than something internal. It has to be far more than some administrative policies that were violated. We're talking about an alleged crime. For DOI to send this over to Alvin Bragg, there has to be an appearance that crimes were committed. So not something that happens overnight. This is something I would say was probably going on for months and years. So I have a problem with DOI because why wasn't this referred before? Obviously because she was under Eric Adams, in my opinion, because she was allowed to retire into total bliss. She retired into total bliss. Not only did she retire into total bliss, she got another NYPD pension. She retired again from the NYPD, all while being investigated by DOI. These investigations take months and sometimes years to come through. And it far surpassed any administrative misconduct. We're talking about potential criminal activity, which is why it was turned over to Alvin Bragg. But how convenient that it was turned over now, after she already retired, after she already retired into total bliss. That's why it's total horseshit. It's total nonsense. This should have been turned over before. And that's why DOI is, in my opinion, just politically hijacked. Just completely under siege because the mayor appoints the DOI commissioner. Just doesn't make any sense. The whole apparatus, the political apparatus in New York City, excuse me, in my opinion, is just completely upside down. It's upside down that the mayor of New York City appoints the police commissioner, appoints all these commissioners, including DOI. I think that New York City needs an overhaul when it comes to politics. Should be an elected sheriff. I said that often. It should be a breakdown of 5 different borough police departments. Each one should have their own sheriff appointed by the people. Many of these commissioner jobs should be appointed by the people. I think it would be a definitely different outcome. Same thing, especially for the commissioner of DOI, appointed by the same mayor that they're supposed to be responsible for looking for potential cronyism and nepotism that could equate to criminal activity. This is interesting. New York City as a political system really needs an overhaul. And I understand the way it's designed. It's designed that way because, excuse me, it's designed that way because in most places, like for instance, LA, I mean, that's another screwed up place anyway, but just an idea of how the politics works. It's numerous cities that make up LA County. But New York City, it's numerous counties that make up a city, right? Each borough is its own county. So, which is why we have this political structure. But maybe it's time to be restructured because it sure as hell we showed with the Eric Adams administration in 2026 with all the modern technology, Eric Adams and his cronies sure ate pretty damn well.
Yeah, I think the problem in New York is the system in general. So I think there's just many parts of the system that are failures at this point, and I'm not sure at this point how do we fix all of them without. Yeah, you can't fix one without fixing the other. You know, I mean, city council's a mess. Okay, we know that they're so left wing, and that all the BS that they push over there is like it's all meant to handicap the cops. Yeah, but you have the DA's office who are more concerned with getting cops than actually prosecuting perps. You know, then you have you have the department themselves and their unions, and the unions who don't want to do their actual job, and the department that it's just politics, and it's just politics and things there doesn't seem to be consistency sometimes. We talked about on Wednesday that Tish was codifying the policy when it comes to body cameras in terms of having them released within 30 days, right? Now here's the thing. When the body cameras were first introduced, the job promised that the footage would be expediently released, right? But then you have politics comes into play. The mayor changes, and then politics dictates that policy. So even though Tish codified that policy, now what happens when the mayor sees that video footage inconvenient to his political agenda. They're going to find some other way to delay that footage being released anyway. So it's like the problem with the NYPD is that it's all politics and nothing. It depends on who's the mayor, and things change all the time, and it doesn't seem to be any sort of things set in stone. So I think the problem in New York City is just the entire system in New York City, and at this point I'm not sure how do you fix it. I In a lot of ways I think if more people leave New York City, that may be the best way. If more people vote with their feet, that may ultimately be the best way to change things, because then they run out of money. And then once they run out of money, they have to account for all the BS that goes on. And, I still believe that we're headed there, and that we're going to get to some version of the Mullen Commission just out of just out of this out of distress for the fiscal situation. When they're looking for money here and there, eventually the easiest way to get that money is to go after the prior administration's corruption, and the prior administration's non bargain contracts and all the BS that went on there. Because they don't want. The problem is city council doesn't want to cut a lot of their left-wing social welfare policies, and the mayor isn't going to do it on his end either. So where are they going to find the money for? Well, they're going to target the NYPD, but there's only so far you could go on that. So I think one of the easiest way is to go back, look in the past, and see if you're not going to recoup the full budget gap, but you're going to find some dollars there. And it's easy to blame a lot of it on Eric Adams, which they're already doing.
Hey, Lily, good morning. Lily's a good friend to the podcast. She's always here. Good morning to you. She has a good question. It's good to clarify this. So she says, Marlon, can you clarify? Because I thought that any evidence about a crime has to be made in discovery in 16 days due to discovery laws for prosecution. So it's a good question. It's a good question. So how it works when it comes to bail reform, that's what you talk about for discovery. When someone is actually arrested, the prosecution has to turn in all evidence about that case within 20 days of the actual arrest. So this is different. This is an investigation right now. This could go on for months, and each different type of crime has its own statutory statute of limitations when it comes to investigations. So there's definitely a difference between Lily, if you have a chance to look up statute of limitations for investigations and in comparison to discovery laws when it comes to an actual arrest for prosecution. So good question. I think it's there's a podcast where we want people to be educated. I think it's great, and I think it's always good to have these kind of these discussions. Marlon, anything you want to add to that? Here you go. It's mute already.
No. I think you covered it well. Yeah, I don't think there's much to be said there regarding that.
And that's why, but I think it's a good question. The reason why I think it's a good question is because I wanted to tie it into the conversation that we're having, right?
Mhm.
And that's why I think it's a good question. What Lily said here is because, in my opinion, if you look at these actual allegations, you have to think about how strong these allegations are or were, because these allegations came from complaints from within that they were so outlandish that they had to make a referral to DOI, that these allegations were not just administrative and needed internal oversight, that they actually crossed over in potential criminal conduct. So I think that's what's interesting. So that's why I said, how long has this been going on? This is not something that happened overnight. This is not 16 or 20 days, as Lily's saying. This is something that's been going on for months or maybe years. I have to look up what the statute of limitations are for some of these allegations, but these are serious allegations that crossed over into administrative oversight that required a referral to the DA's office. So think about how serious these allegations were and how much information and what type of information was provided by the investigators at probation that it led to a criminal investigation. how long is this going on? So, Lily, I hope that helps. I hope this answers some of your questions, or at least expands on the conversation.
Yeah, yeah. And I saw a comment here from Patrick Donahue. Patrick Donahue says that nothing will happen. Listening to Tish downplaying the Cralo fraud by saying they were given authorization by supervisors. That's a good point. That's a good point Pat makes there. So for all of those of you who don't know, Tish was at City Council this week, and she talked about the Cralo vehicles. So for those of you civilians who are watching, the Cralo vehicles are the kind of the basically the confidential unmarked vehicles that are used for investigations, and instead of being assigned to investigators and to units, they were being used as recreational vehicles by the executives, A- and basically she admits a lot of what we said on this network when it was happening, and she states that nobody in the unit has none of the executives who did it were disciplined because they were essentially sanctioned by the department. Now, who's hoping that Chell actually comments about this? I don't think he's gonna make any comments about this, okay? But
It's
the
going to be
point,
crickets, man.
yeah. And I also wonder if they actually checked the GPS on these vehicles, because I'm very curious where these vehicles also went, because there was rumors that Kaz was driving around Adams to the club in one of these vehicles, or his after hours recreational activities, So I'm curious if they were to run the GPS on all these vehicles and see where exactly they ended up, what they would find. I'm sure that's another can of worms that Tish doesn't want to uncover. But again, I'm gonna say to Pat's question that to Pat's statement that I don't know, because there's still a $5 billion budget gap, and the comptroller is saying that it's actually $7 billion still. So they need to find that money somehow. Okay, and there's only so much they can cut the police department. You know, because if you cut the police department on the front end, you're gonna pay months later down the road with overtime, so it's gonna cost you money. So there's only so far you could go with that, and they don't want to cut all their social welfare boondoggle programs. Okay, so where they gonna find the money? Okay, and again, they have to find the money, because if they don't, it's going to trigger the Financial Emergency Act, which basically kind of puts the city in a state receivership. So my question is, where they going to find the money? At some point, even also, by the way, right, where 45 days passed the time limit where Mamdani said his auditors that he would put in each agency would try and find cuts. So they are due for bringing those what they found to city council, and proposing those cuts. So my question is, if we're not going to look back at all this fraud and all this malfeasance, where are they going to get all the money from?
So I actually, at this point, I actually want to thank Jessica Tish, because she solidified the allegations that we actually made on this platform, that we said that these Cralo cars are being improperly used by the NYPD, that it's not just a perk, they're actually being utilized. And we heard rumors that Kaz Daughtry was using the cars to pick up his kids, not go straight to work, pick up his dry clean, this and that, and take care of all the stuff that he needs to take care of, that cops don't have the same amenities. And some people said, oh, it's just a perk. Yeah, where's the perk for the cops? I agree. Every organization has some type of perks. But man, it's perk after perk after perk for the white shirts, those that are moving up, the cronies, the Nepo babies, the tier 1 and tier 2 apparatus to the NYPD, but it's tier 3 general population. These guys are fighting tooth and nail to try to get an RMP that doesn't blow up on them, a car that actually has air conditioning heat, a car that actually has heat in the cold fridge in winter, a car that they could actually rely on, a car that actually has a spare tire. But these bozos and bimbos are running around with cars, and Reed says it here, they have no GPS. You're actually spot on. These Craylo cars, which they're rental allocated cars that are unmarked, and they're meant for business purposes, right? They're rental cars. Think about that. So they don't have someone to put AVLs. You're right. There's no GPS in these cars. They can't be tracked. They're unmarked. Most of them don't have a light package, so they're used as just a regular car, and they're supposed to be for business purposes. These are not business purposes. And so, and Jessica Tisch, the savior of corruption, just throws this right under the rug and tells everybody right in the public, yeah, we're aware of it. Everything's fine. So again, thank you very much. I've been saying every active chief in the NYPD is aware and complicit of the corruption going on in the NYPD. And in my opinion, this is another form of corruption. Now, people say, oh, I'm sure some chiefs are thinking right now, well, I've taken a car here and there. I get it. All right. I have no issue if you're going to work and you stop the cleaners. But at some point, if you're using these cars strictly for your benefit and going far beyond those little perks, those little metric measures, we dived into something completely different. Just shows how much they give a shit about general population. These guys come out of the precinct, can barely find RMP keys. When I say RMP, for anybody active NYPD, you know what that is. If you're a police enthusiast or someone outside New York City, RMP stands for Radio Motor Patrol Car. It's just a stupid fancy name for a patrol car. That's all it is, a marked NYPD car. But these cars are unmarked. They don't have a light package. They're using it to their benefit. Absolutely ridiculous. Think about what's that costing the taxpayer. And meanwhile, you have these cops, you talk about public safety. They get out of the precinct. They can't even find a car that has 4 wheels that are working properly. And yet they're riding around into total bliss. I have a problem with that.
So this is what I was mentioning about the chief savings officer. Remember, he signed this. Mamdani signed this when he got into office, and they have 45 days to review agency operations. So that time frame is just about up right now, and they are due for reporting to the city council and to the administration what they found, where they found or areas they found they can cut in order to save the city some money. So, I mean, I think again that they're going to look through all of this stuff, and it's just inevitable because they need to find that money. Otherwise, I think it will be very embarrassing if the city does go into some sort of receivership. And I don't think I think when the thing about politicians in America is I think when their feet are held to the fire and when they have to do it, they actually will do it because they have no other choice at that. But they'll wait until you get to that cliff before they actually do the things they're supposed to do. But I think that time frame is coming. So one other thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to Chief Holmes is that I think she also told us how the unions work in the NYPD in this, because she actually went to war with the probation union president, which is Devlin Powell, right? So Powell brought up concerns about the attrition because probation was losing a lot of people, right? A lot of senior personnel were leaving. Where have we heard that before, huh? Sounds awfully familiar, right? So anyway, she brought up concerns about that. She brought up concerns about retaliation. And one of those incidents involves when there was 5,000 rounds lost at the range. They went unaccounted for by probation. And the officers who brought it up to supervisors were basically ignored. And Holmes didn't like the fact that information was leaked to the press. She didn't like the fact that probation was embarrassed because of that. But Powell brought up that incident and the state of the probation. And what happened to Powell? Well, there was an investigation on Powell's timesheets. Okay, let me see if I can bring it up. Yes, so charges were filed against Powell, right? And I think in that instance, we're seeing exactly how the unions work in the job. And one of the reasons why they don't speak out, because we also saw it under Ed Mullins, by the way, right? You speak up and they look to sideline you, right? And look to take you off the stage. And again, this so I think this is an example of how the NYPD were to treat unions if the unions actually did their job as unions. They would be investigated. And the job would find some little thing that the unions are doing, be it they're fudging their timesheets or maybe something involving money, but they're going to find it, right? And investigate them and retaliate against them with charges. And so I thought this was interesting when I came upon it.
Marlon, what do you think about this comment? I want to read this comment here because I get it. I get Jessica Tisch walked into a shitstorm. But in a position of leadership, we can't just say, oh, it's not my problem. I wasn't here before. Because when you're in a position of leadership, you're supposed to make changes. You're supposed to put policies in place that actually change how you move forward. That's what real leaders do. You take responsibility and accountability at the moment that you're in a position. So here's the comment. It comes from, let me see if I got it right here. It comes from Cobbs 3506. Good morning, by the way. So I guess I assume it's a guy. If it's a woman, let me know, please. So it says the entire Kralo fleet was grounded once this was discovered. The PC took swift action and stripped the abusers of their perks. Don't blame her. She walked into a shitstorm. Okay, that may be true. But what her response is covering up and not being transparent of what was happening. And also, okay, if that's the case, if she did stop those perks, what did she put in place so it doesn't happen moving forward? And what were the repercussions? I mean, this is just total amnesty. Okay, everybody, hand in your keys. You cost the city millions, but it's over right now. We're just going to wipe our hands clean. And this is what I have a problem with, because often we talk about the three-tiered system in the NYPD. General population, it would be far different for a cop who's taking it unmarked and just having a sweet old good time with it in comparison to one of these chiefs that's costing the city millions. How is this actually dealt with? Where is the transparency and accountability? Oh, just hand in your keys, it's amnesty time is not good enough. It's not good enough. And leaders can't say, well, I wasn't here before. You are here now. What are you doing to make things better? If you're really eradicating misconduct and corruption, then you have to make changes. And I often say that's what good leaders do. They make immediate change and show that they're in a leadership position. That doesn't mean that they have to tear down a natural system, but make some change. Find something where you could put your stamp on it. But just by stopping it, to me, is not enough. Same thing we saw with Internal Affairs. When John and I initiated our complaint to Internal Affairs because our kids were being threatened, it was investigator after investigator because they were all compromised. And what did Jessica Tisch do? She moved a lot of these people out of Internal Affairs. And people say, "Oh wow, she's really looking to eradicate corruption, nepotism, cronyism." And half those people we saw found their way back. It was musical chairs and found their way back to Internal Affairs. So you know what, Cobbs? I get what you're saying. I just don't agree.
Yeah, I see a comment there from Pat Donahue again. Pat says that the Ed Mullins situation is comparing apples to oranges. He stole uninsured. I guess he took money. He took money from the union to support his lifestyle. The question is it really different, Pat? Because my entire point was that the job knows what these unions are doing, and I think they all do that. Okay, I think they all do that, or all do something that's inappropriate. Okay, because a lot of them are there. They've been there for years. Okay, if not, even if they just became president a couple of years ago, like Scott Monroe, he's been in the union, and he's been in the upper echelon of the union for a while now, and a lot of them have been there and are comfortable. Okay, so when you get comfortable, they do certain things that is like, you do certain things to kind of bend the rules a little bit. And I think the job knows what they do. My point is that the job knows what they do and will use it against them if they get out of line, right? So it's, and by the way, this happens in politics too. The government and the FBI knows all the politicians that are corrupt. Okay, it's okay to be corrupt if you're going along with the agenda, but it's not okay to be corrupt when you're getting off the page of the agenda, because that's when they will use it against you. Okay, and that's what I think happens. I think they all do it, and it's fine as long as they don't get out of line. But the minute they get out of line, they're gonna get a case from the FBI, IB, whoever. Okay, and that's how it works. And that's also how blackmail works, and why blackmail is such a big thing when it comes to government and elites. So big, in fact, that we all know the certain unscrupulous billionaire with a island in the Caribbean who made who made a career out of blackmailing people and creating sexual honeypots. Okay, so I just think that's how they work.
Hey, Cobbs, thank you so much for jumping in the conversation. Says, I hear Eric just taking a wider view, and good morning to you. Good morning, brother. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation. I'm not giving you opposition. I get it. I get it. She stopped it. But what does she do to actually make changes and to show real leadership? And that's where leadership comes in, by actually identifying an issue and trying to make something better. Even if it's 200 years old, and we can't just say, oh, it's always been this way. Well, what can we do now to put your mark on it? And that's what creates a legacy also, is that you put your mark on it. And so when it comes to what Patrick Donahue is saying, Pat, I love you, brother. I love you. But let's be honest. I know you're saying comparing apples to oranges. Let's be honest. Who signs those checks? Who signs those checks in the union? You have a treasurer. You have many people in different positions in these unions. And I find it hard to believe that Ed Mullins was able to carry these things out solo, just completely silo, and no one else knows what's going on. Someone signs those checks. It's not him. There's a treasurer that signs those checks, that keeps the books for the union. At some point, I have to say, wait a minute. What's this money? Where did this go? Right? I find it hard to believe that he's doing it solo. I would think that there were other people that were highly aware of it or involved, and maybe pointed fingers at him, because are you telling me no one else is doing it? It was just him? I don't know. It just it doesn't seem to make sense to me. I look at the nomenclature and the breakdown of the unions and the structure and the hierarchy. I just said to myself, how could he be the only one involved? It just doesn't seem to make any sense, especially since he's not the one signing the checks. So, I mean, at least that's the way that I look at it. Marlon, don't you agree? Especially working at Intel, especially when it comes to funds, there's always a paper trail. And that paper trail, I find it hard to believe that paper trail could be isolated to one person, especially part of a union that size, especially the real estate that they have, the bills that they have. How could Ed Mullins do that as a one-man show?
Yeah, I have my doubts about that too. And again, it's not that what I'm saying that the unions are bad. What I'm saying is that what I'm saying is that, I mean, in terms of that, okay, I have my problems with the unions on a whole lot of other things, and there's a whole lot of smoke to that. We've talked about it many times before, how they are not speaking up when they should about a lot of these issues, and the question is, why don't they? Okay, it's not that I'm saying that they're all bad guys, right? What I'm saying is that the job knows the inappropriate things that they're doing, and it's fine as long as you're on the agenda, as long as you don't push back and do what you're supposed to do. But the minute you do, they're going to use that they against you, regardless of whether it is you're taking money from the union, you're fudging your timesheets, whatever inappropriate things the unions are
That's a
doing.
great point,
Yeah.
Marlon.
They all know it, and they save it for in their back pocket until you get out of line, and that's when they're going to use it against you.
I think that's a great point. What I think that you're saying, if I'm right, is that there's a level of tolerance, not necessarily for criminal, right? Not necessarily for criminal activity, but a sense of tolerance just for, I guess you could say, the appearance of impropriety if you're playing the game. But Ed Mullins did not play the game, which is why we all believe that there was a sought-out investigation that led to criminal prosecution. I'm not excusing him. I'm not excusing for him for his behavior. But I think what you're saying, and I do agree, is that what it shows is there's a level of tolerance. It's hard to believe that if this was going on, it wasn't something that just came up during this time. It was very coincidental, which I don't believe in coincidence or happenstance. But he was really outlandish at that point and really given opposition. In which I agree with you, Mullen. I think that you laid it out extremely well, and I think that there is a level of tolerance that, hey, you're in the union, and so much is tolerated until you cross that threshold, and you're no longer playing the game. So, kind of like, hey, everybody gets to eat at the table, but if you don't put down your dinner plate where it's supposed to be, you're not going to eat tonight. I think you're right, brother.
Yeah. See, I no longer look at this as good guys and bad guys in the city. I look at it as opposing mafias. Okay, it's different mafias. Okay, and they're all gonna they all know what each other's dirt is, what they're doing, but they'll use it when it's an opportunistic time for them to do
That's right.
so. And I think it's again, when she spoke out and she pushed back against Chief Holmes, she got charges. Okay, and so the thing is, why did those charges come after? I mean, you open an investigation after she speaks out. I think that it's in this day and age of computers where all this information can be looked up. I think it's very hard to hide things like altering your time. Okay, but I think they knew about it, and it just didn't matter until they needed something against her, and something, because the last thing these jobs want is for the cops and the boots on the ground, or in probation's case, the workers, to all band together and to push back, because there's more of us than there are of them at the top. Okay, so this is how the system works, and this is how they keep you back in line. This is why, I mean, look, it's been going on 4+ years now, and there's still no word on the mandate. Okay, there's no word on it from the unions. There's no look. This week, it came out that Mamdani wants to lower the citywide speed limit to 20 miles an hour, right? And also, they're pushing for the 15 miles an hour limit around school zones throughout the city. And what do we know? Right now we have those same cameras that are like 3 blocks away from schools. Do you see any pushback from the unions? Okay, because think of it: if you live in the city and you got to go to work in Manhattan, okay, it's not that easy to just take the train sometimes. Okay, especially if you're working odd hours at night. I lived in the 7-1, and I used to work in the 7-7 at a point, and I still drove. Okay, especially if I was doing a midnight or a 4x, I still drove because I'm tired after my tour, and I don't know how long my tour is going to be. If I have a collar, I'm there for 15, 17 hours. Yeah, do I want to walk home after that? No. Okay. Even when I moved out further, where am I going to get a bus at like 4 a.m. in the morning? Okay. When I moved out further in Brooklyn, where am I going to get a bus at 4 a.m. in the morning? Okay. So now you're going to increase the time that it takes cops to travel back and forth from work, and not just cops. We're talking other city workers that are essential to how the city runs. Do you hear anything coming out of the unions? No. I mean, where's the pushback for congestion pricing? There is none. So my thing is, this is just how it works, and part of the reason why the unions are not doing the job that they're supposed to do, and that's all I'm simply saying.
Yeah, I think I think good morning, by the way. Smith, Mike Smith, good friend, man. Awesome, real cop dude who was on here, Detective Mike Smith, retired now. Said mafias, they're not that smart. They want to be mafia. There's no doubt about it. That's why I think it's Mikey G said, is it Mikey G who said it's like Game of Thrones? Yeah, we often say it is like Game of Thrones, right? There's power struggle, there's political loyalty, right? Who's at the top? Who's trying to cut whose throat? It is Game of Thrones, spot on, brother. There's no doubt about it. And I do think there is a level of tolerance, even when it comes to these Cralo cards. Like, do your dirt, enjoy it, but don't get so outlandish you're in the spotlight. I think the Eric Adams administration, what it did, it solidified this. So I'm not excusing every administration. I want people to understand, like, oh, everything was just so hunky-dory before Eric Adams and before former Mayor Bill de Blasio. No. What we have learned from the Eric Adams administration is how much shit has been pushed underneath the rug for all these years. Thinking back to something that former Mayor Rudolph Giuliani would say, is that corruption is the default position. Something I learned from John, actually. John read that, which I think is quite interesting, and we had spoke about it, that Rudolph Giuliani, former mayor, would say that for New York City, that corruption is the default position, that you always have to have your finger on it. And what I realize now by doing the podcast and the network and talk about the Eric Adams administration is that it was always there. It's just the Eric Adams administration took it to a level that it was so blatant that it was in your face, in your eye, that they had to do something on it, do something about it. I believe that there has always been some form or level of tolerance. So while I do think that the era that we worked in was probably one of the best the police department or New York City has seen, but still not completely impervious from this type of corruption. And it appears that the corruption and misconduct mostly lies at the top. And the cops, the general population, are the low-hanging fruits that get blamed for all this stuff that's going on. And Marlon, I hear you say it several times today. Well, the job did this, the job does that. And I love hearing that when people say that. I mean, often I have conversations with people, oh, the job is dead. The job did this, the job did that. And I often say, and I've said it so many times, I'm going to say it again, well, who is the job? The job is the leaders at the top. They're the job. They're the ones that control it. They're the ones that make the job dead. They're the ones that destroy the job. So when we say the job is dead, the job sucks, it's the people at the top that are doing it. That's who the job is.
Yeah, it's true. And it's, it's my hope that once we get through this generation of especially of Eric Adams connected people, okay? Because all the people that we've named so far were connected to Eric Adams. And again, they exhibited a certain type of behavior, okay, that they thought was okay. Yeah. And something else, I'm curious if I were to look at how much of their activity as cops, like what did they do as cops? I'm very curious about what they did as cops, because I suspect that a lot of them didn't do much as cops either, But I'm hopeful that once we get past this generation of Eric Adams people, that the newer generation of leaders will be different, But I think I think we might still have a couple more years to go before that totally happens. But yeah, do you have anything else on this topic?
No, I mean, listen, we could beat this thing all day. And that's why I said, again, the big three: nepotism, cronyism, and patronage. And I think that's where the commonalities really rides, and a lot comes out of that. I mean, I think I get it. You know, if I was appointed tomorrow as mayor or police commissioner, believe me, I'm not interested. Not interested. But if I was in that position, and if I told you that I would not appoint anyone that I know, that would be a complete lie. However, if I appointed someone I know, it's because I know them and I know they're qualified, right? And because they're a reflection of me. I would not put someone in a position they're unqualified. I get it. It could be. It's not impossible that, hey, let's say, rhetorically speaking, tomorrow, Marlon went from being terminated for not taking a shot to police commissioner of the NYPD. Marlon may have a nephew who's extremely intelligent and happens to be qualified for a specific position, but that person would be qualified. But what we see with the Eric Adams administration is not that. It's family members being put in positions because of their connections and their ability to help the Eric Adams administration to keep things under wrap. There's an old saying, if anybody knows it, don't trust someone that doesn't have a little dirt on them, right? Right? Like I would say, like if you're in the NYPD and you're a cop and you're working with someone, they never had a civilian complaint, never had an internal investigation, never had been under any speculation, you got to kind of see yourself, do I want to work with that person? If they're too much of a goody two-shoes, that may be someone you don't want to work with. That to me, that's a red flag. Now, at the same thing on the other spectrum, someone that's just a complete mess, not someone you want to work with either. But I do believe that Eric Adams, in my opinion, I do believe that Eric Adams puts people that are close to him that he knows, but that they have dirt on them. Enough dirt and not too much of appearance of dirt that he could put them in those positions, but enough dirt that he could have leverage on them, and stupid enough that he could control them, right? Because and that's the appearance that I see with the Eric Adams administration. In my opinion, Juanita Holmes was not impressive at all. I think she was actually quite dumb. I hate saying that about someone. It doesn't sound nice to say, but I wasn't impressed. I think we often talk about that. It's just people that stay around long enough or they have the right connections and move up within the NYPD. You have to be playing the game. I knew plenty of general population cops that were super intelligent, just decided not to take the test and move up. But many of the chiefs we have in the NYPD, they're not very impressive. I have met some, but not many. I thought Mike LaPetrie was pretty impressive. I thought Mike LaPetrie was quite intelligent. I thought that was one of the few people I saw rise through the ranks who I said, that is someone that was a real cop, kind of hybrid, right? But intelligent. And which is why, in my opinion, he's by far the biggest disappointment out of all of them. Because you're someone who is intelligent, who knows the job, and you didn't say a word while John Shell was running around like a complete unprofessional idiot. Kaz Daughtry, we got promoted by rocket fuel. Jessica Tisch now drags you around by your pocket and tells you get her water, and he doesn't say a word. That's why I'm most disappointed in him, because he's actually intelligent. The rest of them, they're a bunch of boobs who are just lucky enough to be there, who couldn't manage an aisle in Walmart, who should be standing there with a ball gag. But the only one that has been standing there with a ball gag is Mike LaPetrie. Figuratively speaking, I don't know what he does literally, but he stands there and doesn't say a word. And I have a problem with him because he is intelligent, because he knows what's going on. He doesn't need Jessica Tisch at that press conference. He doesn't need any of them. He can walk them right through it, but he doesn't say a word. Is it that good moving up the ranks, having those many stars on your shoulders? Don't tell me that Mike LaPetrie has no idea what's going on. Because if you tell me, how is Mike LaPetrie supposed to know? He made it to the chief of the department. If you don't know what's going on, if you weren't able to dig up dirt, then you need to be in another line of work. You need to be on another line of work. Don't tell me that, he's compartmentalized. He only knows what he's doing. Because if you don't know what's going on with those other active chiefs, you know what? Get another line of work. That is bullshit.
Yeah. Now, I think Chief Holmes was a nice lady, okay? Because I did a detail with her. She's a nice lady, but like I said before, her judgment is questionable.
Oh, that's a nice guy. I'm sorry, not just nice guys, nice ladies.
Yeah. She's nice,
She's nice,
but her judgment and her leadership is questionable, and her judgment is very questionable. when you see all these incidents that her name keeps coming up. I mean, we talk about the 90K SUV, the Cardi B at the Academy, the run, the now all these allegations of retaliation and going on in Department of Probation. So she's nice, but her judgment is very questionable.
But
And
you know something, Marlon? I just want to say that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I love you talking about this because I just think that sometimes some of these people are so nice because they have to be, because they have to cover for the fact that they're idiots. They have to cover for the fact that they lack intelligence, they lack ability, and I think they have to cover for the fact that they have a lot of dirt on them, which is why they have to be nice. I remember there was this girl in PSA 7. She was a cop. I'm talking about. Turns out she was a big time drug dealer, and she was one of the nicest people. She was so nice. And then I'm like, oh wow, that's why she's nice. Yeah, because you got to put on a big cover. Sorry, brother, but I just think nice to me sometimes. Like, what's really under
that? Nice doesn't necessarily mean you're a good leader. Okay, and that's the point, But yeah, I'm sure we're going to be talking about this again, depending on which way it goes with the Manhattan DA's office. So, we'll more than likely come back to this topic again in the future. So, but I see a comment here from Juju. I haven't seen you in a while here, Juju. I'm glad to see you back here. The chats are a little less lively without you. And where's Nin? You tell Nin to get back in here too. We miss him. Yeah? But anyway, Juju says we can't afford to lose our resident conspiracy theories. Thank you, Juju. Thank you. But remember, yesterday's conspiracy theorist is tomorrow's maybe yesterday's conspiracy theory is tomorrow's news. Because remember when we talked about this on Wednesday? And this is in case you guys missed it, this is the incident in the Bronx, in the 50 section of the Bronx, where NYPD off-duty got involved. A cop got involved in an off-duty shooting. He apparently the story so far is that he followed a vehicle he thought was involved in the in stealing his wife's car, right? And he at some point the driver got out, went into the building, and then he came out, and the off-duty cop exits his vehicle and confronts the driver at gunpoint. He apprehends the driver and fires a round through the passenger side of the vehicle, and the vehicle then speeds off to the hospital, where apparently the passenger was struck in the head, and again I think he's brain dead right now. So there's a lot of questions about this, and we talked about how the statement that the Tish and Mamdani released about the codification of the body camera policy, how it was strange. It was strange because it was like a press release with no actual, with nothing really new on it, because the job under Tish was already following that policy. And I speculated, my conspiracy theory, right, Juju, was that the reason why they did that was to divert the media and prevent them from talking about this incident and why there's so many questions involved in this incident. And, the cop was initially modified, but what we're hearing now is that the cop is now suspended without pay. And there has been no further details about this. Okay. So there's a lot of questions still circling about this. And as I said on Wednesday, I hope this cop could really articulate what he was doing on this day, because he is in the Bronx and Darcel Clark is probably licking her chops right now. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we also said on that day that for you guys, you need to be careful and you should think twice about doing something like this, because this guy, Hawk Newsome, right? Look how he's dressing now. He got that nice Kango hat. Man, it's styling now, He went from t-shirts.
That looks like a real Kango too, Marlon.
Huh?
That looks like a real Kango too. That's not a fake, man. That's the real McCoy.
Yeah, man. Hawk is up this game, man. He just needs some He just needs some good shoes now, and he's straight. You know, he went from t-shirts and sweatpants to now he's wearing leather coats, fur coats, Kango hats, and is moving up in the world. You know. But anyway, uh, you know, Hawk Newsom is now they're now calling for they're now demanding answers in regards to that off-duty shooting. So just like we said, be careful because this guy is looking to up his game even more. Here he is now. So again, yesterday's conspiracy theory is today's news.
Mikey G says Sal Greco said that he might be possible intox. He might have been possibly intox at the time. I don't know if he was intox, but what I do know is, to me, what I'm curious about, if I was investigating even further, and I'll get some good info on it. This cop was assigned to Intel, working near Gracie Mansion, or potentially at Gracie Mansion. So to me, the fact that he was modified and not immediately suspended on a shooting such as prolific as this, right, in the public eye, you know, an off-duty cop, the fact that he was modified and not suspended, that was immediate a red flag to me. Like, what's going on here? And I would put my money on it. It hasn't come out yet. I would put my money on it that this cop is part of the tier two system that I talk about in the NYPD that has the connections by nepotism or cronyism. I would put my money on it. Why this cop was modified. I think things changed after this platform and pressure from the media and pressure from some of these community officials of what happened here. But the fact that this cop was modified really says a lot to me. As far as the cop being Dewey, I didn't hear anything about that. I didn't hear anything at all. I mean, I was watching the way the cop was moving with the firearm, and I don't think he was intox. I don't think so. Just based on that, I think it's something completely different. So I don't think he was moving as someone intox, and I don't think he responded because of that. So just maybe he was, but just based on what I saw, I don't think so.
Yeah. I haven't heard anything otherwise myself, but you know, somebody said here Sal is saying that possibly intox again. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure there's going to be more to this because again, the entire story seems odd. You know.
Let's see what Jack says. I'm sure that's it. I'm sure what Jack says is probably a really valuable information.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Somebody also mentioned here the cop had no time on. And I actually think he has 11, 12 years on because I think he came on in 2014, which is still, don't get me wrong, that's still a short amount of time to be in PSS, you know?
That is a short time. You're right, Marlon.
In Intel.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, because the thing is, and this goes back to what I said earlier, right? There are no rules. Everything is arbitrary and politics and who's at the top. And, you know, there's no rules set in stone, you know? When I got into Intel, I got into the criminal section of Intel, right? And it was hard to get into the IAOSS section, which is the more the analytical section of Intel, and where you get a lot of higher profile units in there, and a lot of the secret squirrel stuff happens on that section, right? And this guy to be in PSS now, which is let me see if I recall. PSS is another section that's it's a good gig to get into, but it's hard to get into. But to get in there with that short amount of time makes me think that he does really know somebody, you know. And these are details. I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of these details should be for guys who are ready to retire, you know, seasoned guys who have time on. Even myself, looking back on it, getting into you know, I got into the CIS section again, which is a surveillance team for the FIOs, and I hope, by the way, to have been like a citywide FIO assistant and to work with any sergeant who needed a cop for a day or a week, so I could fill in for their guys. But it didn't work out that way. But I'm saying in general, I honestly do think that there are a lot of parts of Intel should be reserved for guys who are very seasoned, and not these young guys that they're putting in there. And you're seeing it a lot of times. You're seeing these young guys get themselves in trouble because in Intel you have less scrutiny. You can take a car and go have lunch in the Bronx if you want. Hell, I could finagle go having lunch in Westchester County if I wanted, really, you know? And you don't get a lot of that freedom in a lot of the other units. And a lot of times cops abuse that freedom and they get a little lackadaisical about it. They forget that they're still under the NYPD, patrol guide rules. And when I see this incident, I have to wonder if this guy is, maybe he got a little too confident, But let me play
Thursday
let me play
demanding
what
Mayor
Hawkins
Zohran
did.
Mamdani speak out after allegations that an off-duty NYPD officer shot a man in the Bronx.
So we're calling on the mayor to respond to this tragic incident that transpired.
They say this isn't just about the shooting, it's about what they call a lack of response.
The mayor, Mamdani, has not released a statement, has not met with this family.
Leaders point to a recent on-duty police shooting where the mayor visited the victim in the hospital and spoke publicly about the case. They're now questioning why this response is different.
This was an off-duty cop on a rogue investigation.
Police say Monday night off-duty officer Jonathan Bays fired a weapon during a confrontation tied to a suspected stolen vehicle. Video of the incident shows a man pointing a gun toward another male near a parked car. A 30-year-old man was shot in the head and rushed to the hospital.
Yeah, let me just fast forward that so we don't anger the overlords here.
Wow, look at that hair. You gotta go back to that lady. Hold on.
Activists say the man is brain dead, something officials have not confirmed.
Officers should know that they are not above the law.
Bays, a member of the NYPD's Intelligence Bureau, is suspended without pay. When asked about the case and concerns from activists during a later unrelated news conference, the mayor said this.
So I'll say that I'm incredibly troubled by the incident, and I'm glad that the NYPD is investigating it.
But for leaders here, that response isn't enough.
We want an indictment of this officer to let him and all citizens of New York City know that justice is fair and justice is blind.
And the incident is being investigated by the NYPD's Force Investigation Division, though the activists want the state attorney general's office to get involved. That would only happen if the shooting victim dies. In Manhattan, Louis Finley, New York 1.
Yeah, guys. So there you go. They're calling for Letitia James. So here we go.
Yeah, I mean, we said it last time. We said it on Wednesday when we spoke about it that I'm sure the Attorney General is going to dive into this one. It's just, I get it. Mike Smith made a good point. There's really no such thing as an off-duty cop. Yes, but when you're off-duty, there's definitely more scrutiny, right? I agree with you, Mike. You're always a cop, right? Mike, you were a real cop. There's no doubt about it, right? And you should always have that eagle eye. You should always be a cop, make observations, and you should have that training with you instilled for all, necessary 24 hours a day. But your response should be different. And that's where I think we really articulate on Wednesday. If you're on duty and off duty, it's different resources, right? If you observed a stolen car and you called 911 and you were very informative and tried to stay back at a safe position and waited for the on-duty response and then assisted them, that's far different because when you're off duty, you just don't have the same resources as on duty. It really is different, and it's a different form of scrutiny that you receive for those reasons. So someone had put a comment here, I think it was Vic, that they have not put out the record or criminal record of the person of interest that was shot by the cop. So we haven't heard anything about that. But the fact that they haven't put anything out says to me that the person of interest in this probably does have a long history and probably has a huge rap sheet, which is why they're not putting it out. They don't want that. Now, does that mean if the cop acted inappropriately, it makes a difference? No. But listen. And Mike, I get it, man. If someone steals your car right in front of you, right in front of your face, or someone else's car, you got to act on it right there. But this was a little different, right? He found it was his wife's car stolen, and then he looked to find it, and then he went to go find them. That's something completely different. So to me, some people saying, well, he acted on emotion and he acted stupidly. To me, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, he did act emotion stupid, but maybe there's more to it. Maybe because he's in intel, the access that he has to, maybe the people that he's connected to, he felt confident enough that he could do this. Because let's be honest, Marlon, if your car was stolen, your wife's, and it didn't happen in real time for anything, are you going to go out there and use your resources off duty and go find this car? No. You're going to be thinking like, shit, I can't do that. I mean, I told you already how I feel. I'm calling the insurance company. I don't care. But Mike says my man did investigative steps. LOL. That's hilarious. He did. But honestly, are we doing that? No way. Come on. Let's be honest. No way. There's a lot of shit that happens throughout your career that if you wanted to go out and investigate it, you could. And we don't do it, right? I mean, I had plenty of years as a cop that I was single. I wasn't going out checking girls or checking plates on my phone. You know, I could have, right? But I didn't do that. Or, I mean, we just don't do these things. This is pretty ballsy to be like, I'm going to go find this car and investigate it. So I don't think this is a matter of intoxication. That's far beyond. Because if he was intoxicated and could pull that off, damn.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, like, what gave him reasonable suspicion to even stop the dude? You know, like, well, I mean, did you, like, what? That my thing is, did he see? This is why I think there's a lot of details missing here. You know,
There's a lot.
like, did he see? Did he observe the car getting stolen? Did he call it in? And here's what I also think. I think a lot of those missing details is, I mean, we already know this is a bad look for the department, but I think a lot of those missing details might be further bad look for the department. Those missing details, like whether he called for additional help and there was no one available, you know, I don't think that'll be a good look. I mean, if they only had 3 sectors out for the night at the 5-0 at that point, I think that might be, I don't think that's a good look, you know, and we're gonna have to wonder what his defense is gonna be, you know, because part of me suspects that he called for help and then he was getting and nothing was happening, and he saw the guy about to jump in his car, so he said, you know what, fuck it, let me stop this guy now. Maybe the sectors are gonna catch up with me, you know, the precinct's gonna catch up. They're gonna come soon. But again, I wouldn't have done that, and it's just not worth it. You're disadvantaged. You don't have a tactical advantage here. You don't have your tools. You don't have backup. It's a mess, and I don't think it's worth it, considering you're also in the Bronx where they're looking to lock you up, not just fire you, but lock you up. So it's just not worth it. And as we head on into riot season, right? The annual riot season festivities that we see every year now in the springtime, who wants to bet that this hawk just found his cause to protest about now? You just gave Hawk a reason to go protest all over the Bronx now. And so if those Bronx cops who are going to be assigned to those protests have a busy summer, this might be the reason why you're gonna have a busy summer. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, right now, Hawk Newsom and Reverend McCall, they're at the shop right now for leathers and furs. All right, I gotta get another coat, man, because a blue fur coat, you can't wear that everything. It doesn't match everything, so they need another coat. I mean, Hawk Newsom is looking like BLA over there, and then looked like what was that show where everybody had the big giant hair? What was that show she looked like? That old 70s show, man. I'm trying to remember.
Which one?
It was a black show. Hilarious.
You mean
The Jeffersons.
Which one?
The Jeffersons.
Oh yes, the Jeffersons. Or what about the other one with JJ? What the hell was that show?
Us.
Huh?
Soul Train? No.
No. It was with JJ. It was actually a spinoff of All in the Family.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Sanford Son? Wait, no.
No, it's Good Times.
Good times.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
they just put it up in the chat. Good
Yeah,
times.
somebody just put it up. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, she came out. Shavonna Newsom, right? She came out with that good times. Yeah, everybody's putting it down. Good times. That's hilarious. It said, "Black Ninja said, how do you know good? How do you not know good times? Come on, Marlon. Jesus, Marlon's not black, man." That's hilarious. No, but seriously, there's a lot to the story we don't know. I want to know. We haven't heard anything in this preliminary investigation. I want to know what actually led to those shots being fired. Was there a gun presented there? What happened that he ended up firing, right? I mean, it takes a lot for a cop to fire a weapon. What happened at that point? That's where I'm very curious about how he got to the point and that he's actually firing shots. And we haven't heard anything. And that's where the NYPD fails sometimes, is not being transparent. If the cop did nothing wrong, then let's protect him. Let's tell the public what transpired, what led to shots being fired. That's how we support him. But the fact that the NYPD hasn't said much and is being kind of a secret squirrel on this, that leads to more depth for Hawk Newsome, Reverend McCall, to really put their feet on this and incite more inflammatory rhetoric that could lead to violence. Who put it here? It was, Stephen S. says, "We're here for you, Marlon. That was a great show. Strong father, family, funny, and the sister was beautiful." Yeah, that was a good show, man. Good Times was good.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something else. That was my bad. I should have known that one, especially since my uncle was good friends with John Amos, and I've met him a couple of times. Yeah.
Oh, he's hilarious. We're gonna have to have a segment at the end of this for now. I'm gonna have to name that show. Name that show that actually corresponds to this podcast.
Yeah.
Good Times, man.
But yeah. I'll make it up later on, guys. I'll watch some Coming to America later on tonight. Okay. I'll.
Sweet. Yeah, he was great in this, bro.
Yeah. Good actor. Died recently too. Maybe a year or two ago. Yeah. But yeah. Just one more thing before we go. I thought this was appropriate to talk about because, we talk about guys throwing things at you at protests, and we had that recent attempted bombing. Well, it's not attempted because they tried to bomb it. It just failed, because they sucked at being bomb makers, right? But I thought it was appropriate to quickly talk about this. And because of those incidents, and because this is the second time Molotov cocktails have been perps. Well, there's been an incident with Molotov cocktails. The first incident was 3 perps. I forgot which borough they were pulled over in, but they were caught with Molotov cocktails in their vehicle. And this happened, what day was it? Yesterday in Staten Island, right? Let me see if I can play the video for you.
And the volume's kind of rough on this one. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
There's no sound coming up.
No sound coming up?
No.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what's happening with that. Yeah. I'm sorry about that, guys. But basically, somebody tossed a cocktail through a window in a house in Staten Island. So my point in bringing this up, guys, is that if you're at a protest, especially as we head into the summer months, and especially as Hawk is going to be rallying the lunatics in BLM. Okay. And you never know, the Antifa bros may join up with him, right? As we head into those summer months, right? You should be aware of this, okay? And if somebody has some object in their hand, a hard object, you should at least question them about what they plan to do with that, okay? And by all means, if it looks like a Molotov cocktail, that's more than enough for you to draw your firearm on them and tell them to drop that, okay? Because more than likely, they want to throw it at you. So just something to keep in mind.
I'm glad you brought that up. There definitely has to, excuse me. There definitely has to be some better training with the NYPD when it comes to how to present or what to present when someone could be brandishing a potential bomb. I mean, these are scary situations, right? Because you should present your firearm. And the reality is we've seen a lot of people throughout the nation. I've read a lot of stories and different stories where people have had a lot of fake bombs and they make threats. And what do you do in that position, right? And so the NYPD really needs to lay out what the mission is, what the training is, and how you should respond. Because unfortunately, in that position, I think there's no other tool that's applicable. You have to draw your firearm. And if someone presents and even deploys a fake firearm, well, unfortunately, you may have to shoot that person. It sucks, but what are you going to do? I mean, it's a lose-lose situation. But there has to be, and I don't think there is at this point. At least when I was on, I retired 3.5 years ago. They didn't have anything labeled out yet, Marlon. At least if you could tell me, because I don't remember of how to respond to someone that has a bomb or even a suicide bomber. And what do you do if you have a suicide bomber? And I don't think the NYPD has ever laid that out. Samantha Giacone, how you doing? She says, "Don't worry, Eric. We get trained by cheesy videos of people who never do patrol. Only the best." Yeah, those videos are terrible. All those videos are us for comedy. Like, they're horrible. I tried a couple times, you know, if I had administrative work, I'm like, all right, I'll put this video on. I remember putting the videos. I'm like, oh my God. So I would just put the video on. I would turn the sound off, do my work. It would play through and I would get credit for it. Half those videos I would have watched because, first of all, you know, they were by people that never saw the street. So Samantha is spot on. And it was just pure nonsense. You need hands-on training. Listen, a video might be applicable after you had hands-on training as a reminder, but I think just on a silo, a video is not enough. At least for me, though everyone's different. I gotta get my hands on things. Stay Trained Up says, yeah, that's what I do. Yeah, brother, I would just put it on, turn the video up and let the thing play, and you get credit for it. Just that's stupid. I think most of the job is doing that. Who's watching these videos? I mean, I tried. I'm sure most of you tried too. Like, this is terrible. You know, same thing. They bogged us down with so much administrative work while you're trying to do the job. Then you have to watch all these body cameras. Who could actually watch all those body cameras? Half the time I'm looking at the body camera, turn it off and silent too because you get so much work. Absolutely idiocracy going on there.
Yeah. Interesting. Stephen S says Chuck Norris just died. Damn. Yeah. And then the news is reporting it too. Chuck Norris.
Oh, wow, man.
Yeah, man. Wow. If you had any recollection of the 80s, man, Chuck Norris was big, you know. Even up until the early 90s, they used to show his movies all the time on TV, you know. And I used to love watching Walker, Texas Ranger when I was a kid, yeah.
How's it for Life put it up? That was an amazing scene. Chuck Norris versus Bruce Lee in the Rome Coliseum. Yeah, that was iconic. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, hell of a guy too, right? He talks about how he went to when he met the Gracies in Brazil, and he didn't know jiu-jitsu yet. And you know, he thought he was gonna go over there and kick ass, and he got humbled. But great guy, right? Instead of saying like, shit, this sucks, I'm not gonna go back into this, he went and he dived into Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So amazing. Yeah, hats out to him. What was that gym machine he was doing though when he started doing those commercials? Like, come on, Chuck. Remember he started doing the gym commercials?
Yeah. I forgot. I know that That was a big thing back then. Was that around the Billy Blanks time frame? Remember that was
yeah.
Billy Blanks?
I remember all the women were getting those Billy Blanks videos.
Yeah.
But that was on actual cassette tape, right? No, not cassette tape. That was VHR, right? VHS? I think so.
Yeah, VHS.
VHS,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, how far we come, right? Remember how much room VHSs would take up? And you just think about like how like just even like the furniture business changed, right? Because back then we used to buy stuff to keep our CDs or your cassette tapes. You know, I remember driving around at 17 years old with my license and I actually had a tape deck in my car. I had like a old Delta 88. Anybody remembers those with the bucket seats? And then when the tape get messed up, I always had a pen in my car to fix the cassette tape, to roll the ribbon back. Good times, man. No cell phone, just a beeper. Yeah, good times. Actually, having quarters in your pocket.
Yeah. They're saying it's the Total Gym. What is it? Total Gym.
The Total Gym, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he was wearing spandex in those things.
Yeah. You know what? Just to quickly go back on what you said, Eric, about the bomb. That's something I said that they especially didn't seem prepared for if the guy had a suicide vest.
Yeah.
Because I'm not, and there's something the job should think about. If a guy's involved in an act of terrorism, I'm not entirely sure. In fact, if I'm in charge, I'm not putting a cop in the car with him. I'm getting bomb squad to go over this guy, especially since we know that PTN and TATP, these guys can pack it into a belt, a shoe, and whatnot. And you know, I personally would have that guy, lock him in the car, RMP, right, and then get bomb squad to come and check him. And once bomb squad goes the one over, they bring the dog on him. Then he's getting transported back to the precinct. I'm not putting a cop in that vehicle with him for what possible scenario may happen from that. And it's something the job really should think about, especially in a situation like this where this guy was already trying to use a bomb on the scene. I definitely don't think he should have been just transported back. Okay,
I've been saying all the time. I think the NYPD does not have any training literature or procedure in place. I mean, God forbid, in the middle of Times Square, some guy comes out with a vest on with wires hanging out of it, pulls out a detonator, holding his thumb on it. What do you do? Think about it. All kidding aside, what do you do? Right?
Yeah.
What do you do? It's like the old thing I used to tell my cops. There are some issues within the training, that there's some holes where people they're stuck because the train never opens or closes the ends. Like, for instance, I would always tell my cops, what do you do? Right? And we've all been there. What do you do if you tell someone to drop the gun and they don't drop the gun? But they hold the gun like this, but they don't actually drop it, right? It's still an armed man, right? And I guarantee you know what most people do? They say drop the gun 100 times. And how many times we see that with cops, just to show how much restraint they have? Drop the gun, drop the gun, drop the. Like, how many times you have to tell someone to drop, excuse me, to drop the gun before you actually fire? I mean, I would say, okay, once, maybe first time they didn't hear you, maybe 2 or 3, but we've heard cops saying over and over to perpetrators, sometimes 15, 20 times, drop the gun, just to show you how much restraint. If they still have the gun in their hand, my advice, they're still armed.
Yeah.
I mean, it only takes an eighth of a second to turn that gun from up in the sky to turn it towards you. So, but I just want to read this one. I think it's hilarious. Of course, Pat Donahue. So, John, if you're watching, he says, does Chuck Norris have his own yellow Mai Tai strike bag? Yeah. John's probably punching that bag right now. So, yeah, enjoy your vacation, brother. Shout out to you.
Yeah, and I saw somebody in there just about Chuck Norris, the Octagon. Yes, the Octagon is a great one. You know, great film.
Good flicks.
Yeah.
I liked what was the one where he's rescuing the POWs out of Vietnam?
Yeah, Missing in Action.
That's it. Yeah. Everybody
Yeah.
knows that one, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Which
movie.
actually predates Rambo. Well, it predates
Does it?
Rambo 2, you know?
Rambo 2. Yeah.
Yeah. And because Rambo did the same thing in Rambo 2, you know?
First Blood. That was off the hook. That was
Yeah.
great.
But First Blood is a completely different film from the other Rambo films, you know? First Blood is like you get an Oscar award for it, you know, for serious acting. Serious Topic Part 2 and 3 and all the others are like just off the rails, you know? One man army, you know? So different films, you know? But Michigan Action's a good one. Lone Wolf McCade, I kind of like that too back in the day.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's Pat Donahue put
Invasion
greatest Chuck
USA,
Norris movie,
great one.
Invasion USA.
Yeah, great one.
Any coffee or donuts before we get out of here?
Yes. So we have $1.99 from 516 Diecast. Thank you, 516 Diecast.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
We appreciate it. Good morning, all PO Affronti PFD. God bless you all. Affronti, PO Affronti. Yeah.
He always puts that.
Who that name is, huh?
Diecast always puts that. He's got to let us know what that means one day.
Yeah, I'd have to look up who that cop is.
Yeah.
But yeah. Thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you being a steady viewer of ours. And we also have My Visual Zone. Thank you again, another regular viewer of ours. We appreciate it. She says Holmes was a terrible CEO of Queens North, awful chief of training, and even worse, probation commissioner. Total DEI hire, good riddance. Yeah. It's an example of, you know, she should have known when to call it quits, and you know, enough is enough with the embarrassments. You know, I mean, how many times is her name going to come up in the news media with some incident that exemplifies like terrible judgment? You know, so.
I think she was the double whammy. She was DEI moving up, but she was also part of the nepotism cronyism. So she was the double whammy.
Oh, go yeah. I agree 100%.
But that's okay because she can run a mile and a half. She just doesn't think you should.
Yeah.
She does it, but you don't need to.
Yeah.
It's important when you run around one police plaza and you have nothing to do. Go off for a nice run. But the cops and the police academy, they're going to go out and arrest people. They don't need to run a mile and a half. No, not necessary.
Yeah. And again, guys, remember, Sewell had a problem with that. Okay, so it's not just us talking about it. It's not just us. You know what these retired guys do. What these guys they're not on the job anymore. What do they know? No, Sewell had a problem with that. Yeah, but I think that's all. That's it for the super chats. And
that's it. All right. Well,
that's a wrap.
Your Friday round. More comments coming in here. What's the last one here? Let's see, keep them coming. Oh, wait.
Yeah, we got one for Patrick
Donahue, baby.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. We appreciate it, brother. Says Tal Makari, even though he took annual vacation pick, he's required to get his numbers in for the monthly activity report.
The rent is due.
Yeah.
Hey, active retired cops know what that is. If you're not a cop, they would always tell you, listen, even if you go on vacation, even as a rookie, it was pretty stressful, right? Because if you had if you got sick and then you had 2 weeks vacation, you only had 1 day of patrol, they were like, oh, you still got to pay the rent. That meant, well, and if anybody says there wasn't a quota, you're lying. That meant, you know, you had to get those 20 summonses. You had to get that C summons. You had to get that collar on that last day. And yeah, there were plenty of people running like maniacs. And if you didn't have it, they actually came to like, where's your activity? Like, you don't see I was on vacation. I wasn't here. No, pay the rent. So, yep.
Yeah. And with that said, it makes you wonder how exactly guys like Edwards and Richie Taylor and all these guys or Shepard with their handful of collars, how exactly these guys didn't get written up and reprimanded by their COs, you know?
What rent were they paying? These guys weren't paying any rent.
No.
The rent was due, baby.
Think you have 5 years in uniform and you only have like 20, 26, 27 collars. Like what were you doing?
Well, they had more than that. more time in uniform doing.
Yeah.
Zero.
What were they doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But thanks again for the super chat, super chat, Pat.
Pat, thank
we
you, brother.
appreciate
Coffee
it.
donuts.
Yeah. But
Marlon, any housekeeping? Anything before we cut? Excuse me, cut out of here.
Let me look up and see what's on the 10-4 Tavern for Tuesday.
Yeah. While he's looking, just want to say, everyone, like, share, subscribe. We appreciate it. Your Friday roundtable is about 2 hours and 15 minutes into it. John will be back on Monday. Hope you had an awesome week, brother. Traveling around. Next week, he's going to be a little bit taller. We'll put some platforms on. He's going to have a couple follicles on his hair. Who knows? Maybe his muscles will be glistening. Or wear a tank top or something. It is getting towards April, right? In Florida, it's finally warming up. Here we go, 10-4 Tavern. Uh-oh.
Yeah, so coming up on the 10-4 Tavern on Tuesday, that's at 7:05 p.m. guys. On Tuesday is Sheen Malinowski, who is chief of detective.
That's Sean.
What did I say? That's the Cole guys. Okay, that means it's time for some more Theraflu. Okay.
Yeah, try to say that name 10 times.
Yeah, but he was a chief of detectives in LAPD, and so that should be very interesting. I always like hearing about the West Coast because again, we're in the East and we have our own separate culture for policing, which is very different from the West Coast guys. It's absolutely different, and so I always love hearing about how they do things out there. So this should be very interesting, especially since again, LAPD is, aside from NYPD, one of those agencies that gets a lot of respect in terms of setting the table for law enforcement, is the LAPD. And I've said it before, I think in a lot of ways, those guys are much more squared off than we are. What did I see? Smith says LAPD was shit back in the day like us. Yeah, absolutely, brother. Absolutely. I think those guys are squared off. Every time I see them, I don't think I've ever seen a overweight LAPD cop. Those guys always look like maybe it's their dark uniforms too, but they always look like they're ready for business. So I have a lot of respect for LAPD. So this should be a good show, and so jump in, guys, on that day, and let's have another lively chat for that episode.
Oh, I gotta laugh here. Someone put that John's gonna be wearing a wife beater. I think it's hilarious only because people actually still refer to tank tops as wife beaters, but I'll never forget one time we had a robbery. It was in PSA 7. Someone put over a description of the perpetrator that we're looking for, and they described on the radio that the guy's wearing a wife beater. I don't know. I just thought that was hilarious. On radio, I'm like, we gotta get that transmission. Male this, whatever height, wearing a wife beater. I think that was hilarious, by the way. It's the last coffee and donuts here. 26 and out, $4.99. Says Sewell had more balls than all. Yeah, she had more balls, like figuratively speaking, but literally, than these guys.
Yeah. Very true. And so thank you, 26 and out. We appreciate the super chat. We really do. And I saw something from Lily. She says Nassau PD, I think their standards it. The thing is, Lily, Nassau is a much smaller police department. Okay. The thing is, the large police departments in those regions tend to set the example for a lot of the other police departments to follow. So when you look at the Northeast, I mean, a lot of agencies kind of, a lot of them kind of imitate us because we kind of suck the oxygen out of the room, and when you look at the West Coast with LAPD is the largest agency in the West Coast. At least I haven't checked the numbers recently, but they used to have 10,000 total uniform personnel.
Yeah.
So that's pretty up there. These agencies set the table for the regions that they're in.
Well, and if you think about it, the LAPD is a lot bigger than people realize because talking about 10,000, because LA County is huge, right? There's a lot of other police departments that are have their own departments in LA County, right? Like Long Beach and all these other police departments. And you also have the LA County Sheriff. So it's a big police department, and they have to commingle with these other police departments. Something that the NYPD is not really used to. The NYPD, that's one thing I have to give them credit to, right? Because the NYPD is not used to sharing ground with other police agencies, right? The NYPD is at the helm, where LAPD they have to share the ground with these other agencies out there and other police departments and other municipalities. So with that being said, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all, everyone, for being with us, the Finest Unfiltered. As Marlon said, we'll be back Monday, of course. John will be back with a couple hair follicles. Tuesday, 10-4 Tavern. They have awesome guests throughout the entire nation. Wednesday, we'll be back in the morning, of course. And, of course, your executive perspective will be back. And so we'll keep running. The show's moving. We're at 150,000 subscribers. We really appreciate it. Without our friends and listeners, we could not have gotten there. So any final words, Marlon? I want to say thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. Go out there, have a good time, and hopefully start some warm up for you.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you guys for joining us today. And the chat was awesome today. A lot of lively chat today. And we always appreciate you spending time with us. And we hope that you have a great weekend. And and John will be back on Monday. So it'll be it should be even more lively,
Yeah. Do something to piss him off so he comes back all angry.
Well,
but,
he's been talking about city council, he's been posting about the city council hearing. So I think angry John should be ready for Monday.
I mean, be ready to go. He's going to be a little bit taller, stretched out, muscles glistening, hair follicles. So yeah, no, but he enjoys it, man. Does a lot, brother. We appreciate it. This is very fitting since we're talking about rocket fuel promotions and we're talking about nepotism, cronyism. Here's your Kaz Dorch. Everybody, Finest Unfiltered. See you. Have a good weekend.
Right.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?